We always watch, when we watch it together or separately, when we watch these pieces that we're going to talk about the creator with. I always take little notes of what I want to talk about, and what I wrote down first was, it's just a series of things you never see on screen. I mean, it's starting, I barely know where to start, but let's just start with, I think it's like 3 scenes in, you have him giving her the ring in the diaphragm case, and, it just it makes my mind go, wow, you never see a diaphragm. You never see
It's
a woman.
groundbreaking.
But it is. It's subversive because there's such a thing against it.
Yeah.
That, and it's like being a fish and being in water and going, you don't know that it's water because that's just your environment. I mean, the fact that we never see things like that, we're so used to that, we just think that that's normal. We just think that it's normal that you would never see a woman's contraceptive device.
Rubbers are always the butt of a million jokes,
It's always
right?
the rubber. It's always the rubber. It's never the diaphragm. And there was something about seeing that just unhinged my mind and made me remember, wow, actually everything I've seen up until now are things that you never get to see. Like you never get to see, like the moment when the 2 girls are, when she says, I ordered for you. I mean, that level of intimacy between 2 women, which is normal, which is part of our world, just like diaphragms are, but you never get it. It's like any person who, I mean, I know from my own self, I really learned this through my TV work, is that people do find it very empowering to see their own realities depicted on screen. And I mean, I hate to use the word empowering so early in the evening, but it's just that
once you said diaphragm, you can say empowering.
It's just that
Sort of
that's what that movie does for me. It's like, thank you. I'm just seeing things that are my reality.
The movie I just made, the opening sequence, you'll appreciate, because it's boobs getting mammograms. The whole sequence. It's pretty funny. But speaking of that, it was
that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's the thing. It's like you go like a homing pigeon, like a little device, to the thing that doesn't get shown. That's an incredible gift.
Since you brought up the movie that you're working on, we'll go back to walking and talking.
Okay.
But what is the movie you're working on about? And can you tell us just how you would pick that for your first image?
I know. I don't know. Well, the movie is about, it takes place in New York, and Catherine Keener is married to Oliver Platt, and they have a teenage daughter, played by Sarah Steele. She's 15, plays 15. And they work they own a mid-century modern furniture store. So they're kind of chic and nicely dressed. And they've bought the apartment next door to theirs so they could bash through the wall and make their apartment bigger, but there's an old lady still living in it, so they have to wait for her to die to get her apartment. And Amanda Peet and Rebecca Hall play her granddaughters, and they take care of her, one more than the other. And it's about the 2 families and how their lives intersect. And Rebecca Hall is a mammogram technician, so that's her job. And it's really just her job. It doesn't have a huge amount of meaning in the movie, except that, one person in the movie has a lump in her breast, but it's not what it's about at all. But for some reason, that I just thought it'd be really cool opening to show all these.
It's a really cool opening. I can
We'll
tell you
see.
that.
It's a little shocking.
Yeah.
But it has this really great song under it that's kind of funny. Do you know the Roaches? These 3 sisters. Yeah. They have a song. They recorded a song recently that I called "No Shoes," and it's about people who, like, you think you got it bad until you meet someone worse than you, and then there's all these different kinds of boobs. So.
But it's
good
also,
and bad.
You're so much of Walking and Talking, but the other movies that you've done they're so evocative, and even the opening scene with the 2 girls on the bed and how close they're sitting together and looking at that dirty book. And unless I'm mistaken, it looked like their hair was wet, which also said so much. You saw what their whole day was before looking at the thing, and it really put me back into this thing where, for being at summer camp, not necessarily that place, but being with your friends and spending that whole day, and you don't bother to dry your hair, and just the intimacy. And you captured that in 20 seconds. And looking at the dirty book, yeah.
I mean, it's the whole idea. The whole idea, and we talked about this kind of this afternoon together, the whole idea of depicting a really complicated, close, intimate woman friendship is obviously, it's funny. This is just a coincidence, but we've both done that. It's just not done a lot.
Not unless you want to be called a lesbian,
Right.
which I was. I mean, people would see that and go like, "Oh, well, this is clearly you're gay." Like,
It's just so
Not only
hard.
you're gay, but were they gay too in the movie?
well, that's what I mean. I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
what
I'm
they're
saying,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you were gay, and
No, well, they
thought,
assumed that they were gay, which
Right.
meant I was gay because I'm them
right,
or
right.
I'm one of them.
Why
But
do you think that why do you think that is?
Yeah, why is that?
Because it seems so clear to me it was about an intimate platonic relationship. So do you have any thoughts about that? Or?
because it's unusual to see, how any of us women who've had close, it's very dramatic and there's fights and breakups and it's intense and I don't think people, I guess men thought that, not women. I don't think.
Well, I
women
mean,
thought
we
that.
all know that it is like that because
Yeah.
we've all experienced that. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that we could take a little poll, and probably wouldn't be one woman in this room who wouldn't say, "Yeah, like that. That's a feature of my life." I mean,
But I guess people don't think, or most men don't think that it's worthy of the main topic in a movie.
Yeah.
That that's okay if it's the B story, but that romance is the topic, unless it's a buddy movie, and then that's okay. It's just a sexist, typical.
I just think that because you're absolutely right. But then when you make a movie that is that, the word you used this afternoon was riveting. That's one of the reasons I could watch it so many times.
I felt like the whole thing, every scene was loaded and riveting, and yet we're talking about it and going, there's not the kind of plot that you're used to, but yet there is an emotional story where every scene is another little building block in the emotional story. So to me, the movie seemed riveting. And even though I knew it was going to happen, not just between the two women friends, and what I love too is there's always these unspoken things. And every scene was fraught with the unspoken things. It was our cat. You're not going to come talk about our cat. And you see how their lives are changing and they're still fumbling and trying to hold on to what they had. But you really captured that, but also in all the relationships.
in all the
between
relationships.
the couple that was about to get married with Andrew, Liev Schreiber, and Catherine Keener.
Right. I mean, I love the moment. It's just again leaping out at me. The moment when to me, your scenes tend to have a quality where they start in one place and really end up somewhere else. Which I don't know if you ever think about that. I hope I'm not ruining your.
My mystique.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I really meant it as a question because it could be that you go, well, yeah, I love that in a scene. Like I strive for that. But do you
No.
No, that's not. Well, when you're writing
The
a
scene doesn't go anywhere. I cut it out. So the ones that stay in will go somewhere.
right.
Right.
But I mean, there's so often like a real twist in the scene. For instance, let me Like let me give you an example. Like he's Todd Field, Frank, right, is in bed with her with Anne Heche, and he starts out he's like, let's make love. I forget the line, but he basically wants to have sex. Then they get into then they start to kiss. Then they get into the conversation about the little mole. It's the first setup of the mole. Then she does a whole twist and goes, so you want to play? You really want to play?
Oh, right.
And he goes, yeah. And she pulls out that game, and he doesn't miss a beat. It's like what happens in life, but you almost never see that depicted, where somebody absolutely just ignores what they just said. And both people ignore what they just said. We do that all the time in life, but see, these are the kind of things like I'm obsessed with, is like the stuff that doesn't get into a script because it's too it's too big of a mess, and it's too strange.
But I don't know if it. I mean, it also doesn't appeal to everybody. I mean, I bet there's some people in here that are thinking it was not riveting. I mean, maybe
Well,
You
maybe
think they
some
would have gone
fellas.
home by now?
I don't know.
They would have said, "Let's go to the
They're
Grove
like, how
for
did she
dinner."
get paid for that?
I didn't.
But
you
you know what I mean,
Hold
like-
the gun to these people's
Right.
heads, okay? They're here voluntarily,
Right.
pretty much.
But I think it does. I mean, that kind of minutia that does speak to you and me, and you know, you'll see it that many times, is pretty specific. You know, I think that a lot of people don't want that minutia or that messy stuff that much.
Well, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think what's beautiful about what you're doing is that you're doing it. In other words, since nobody virtually is doing it, or almost nobody, the fact is that you're doing it, it's needed. I think that's what I would say. I mean, I don't really want to, I'm not really interested in judging things by like how many people are into it. I'm more interested in like, does it fill a void of some kind? Does it provide something that actually isn't being talked about? Does it talk about something that isn't being talked about? And that to me is the power of what you're doing.
So, Nicole, let me ask you about when you're developing a plot like that, and obviously your mind works in a certain way because you could definitely see that the same person wrote and directed those movies, even though there's a progression. But when you sit down to work on a story like that is an emotional, you know, it's about the characters' relationships and how they're changing. How do you start developing that story? I mean, it's the kind of story that I love to tell, but I always feel kind of overwhelmed, like, what is the story? And so how do you start, what do you start with, and what's your
Okay.
process?
I'm just looking at you. Don't we look alike?
We're cousins.
No.
I was
think
gonna-
it's like, do I look like you, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
You have this very similar color eyes,
Really?
and your hair is a little.
Do you ever have that weird, this isn't like I'm flashing on this thing. Do you ever, like sometimes I'm walking down the street and I have this flash like I'm seeing myself? No? I'm the only one this happens to? Whatever. Like I see someone and it's like, oh, never mind. Okay, let's move on really quickly.
Okay.
Um, I was like just expecting
So
everyone to
funny.
go, oh yeah. I
You
like
hear the
what you're
little
talking-"
voice that tells you like to run across the street. No.
The little
well,
red devil.
right, exactly. Oh yeah, that's right. See, I haven't seen the movie in a long time because I'm very embarrassed, you know, about it.
Well, talk about that for
I
a
try
second.
not to be because, you know, everyone has to start someplace, and it's a thrill that I got to make it. It's just, it feels very. I don't want to sound too hard on myself, but I guess I'm probably
You
hard
are
on myself.
hard on yourself.
Yeah, it's like amateurish. Certain things make me cringe.
You should go back
Some
and
things I like.
you should
that I
go
think
back
are
and
still
look
good.
at it.
No, I have. That's why.
Oh yeah. Wow.
I mean, I think the new Beverly was playing Walking and Talking and Lovely and Amazing, and I went to watch them both. I was like, it was just, it's, you know, it's humbling,
I
but
don't think that
it's
has,
okay.
if
It's
I
okay.
may say,
Mm.
I don't think that has too much to do with reality.
Probably
I mean,
not.
I think
right?
that's just the equivalent of, you know, you could pick up your script that you just finished, and you know, you read it through and you go, oh my God, I'm a genius. Like, this is really amazing. Like, this is the best thing anyone's ever written. And then you pick it up like 10 hours later and you really want to put a bullet in your head. And it's the same exact script. And it just has to do with, it doesn't have anything to do with what you actually wrote.
It has to do with how much you ate that day and how if you feel okay about
It
yourself.
has to do with something else. I mean, and I just think that's actually important to say because
Yeah.
I don't really think any of us would, or any of you, would find it hard to relate to you sitting watching a screening of something you wrote and directed years ago in the 90s, and we're not like amazed that you find it hard to sit through or that you cringe at things, but that just doesn't have anything to do with our reality of it,
Right.
with our experience of it. This is too personal to you.
Right.
But let's go back to like, actually, maybe you could even talk about it in terms of this mammogram scene that you put in the beginning of your new movie, because it's maybe fresher in your mind. When, let's say you're just getting in, you know, that idea that you just said to us about there's this couple and they buy the apartment, but the little old woman who lives in it isn't dead yet, right? Like, how did that form in your mind? As how did it start becoming something that was really going to be your next movie, as opposed to just an idea that floated in your mind?
It's hard for me to commit to an idea because a lot of things do start out as just ideas, and then 10 hours later it's like, ugh. Well, I'm glad I didn't say that out loud. But this one started with that situation. My friend has an apartment in New York, and she did that exact thing. She lives in this building that we actually shot in. And yeah, it was because we ended up having a bad location manager, and that's what we ended up having to do. I was like, well, it takes place in the building in my head. Let's go there, and we got it. But she bought the apartment of the old lady next door. You know, it was like she's rent controlled, so they still pay the rent to like the owner of the building. No, they ended up paying the rent to my friend.
Right.
And then when she dies, they can get her apartment. And she became good friends with this woman. And then she died, and now she's got a big, beautiful apartment. And that particular situation just seemed really interesting to me, and it seemed like a good jumping off place. Like, it's like, yeah, that's really cool, because it's like, are they bad for doing that? Are they friends with her? Is it okay? She's going to die anyway.
So in a funny way, it's I mean, just to hone it down a little, it's kind of a series of questions that start occurring to you, questions that in a funny way don't have one answer.
Right.
I mean,
Right,
which
there's
is-
never I mean, there isn't an answer in the movie. These people aren't bad or good or whatever, and the old lady knows that they've bought the apartment, and does that make her feel her mortality more? And is she nice? Is she mean? What's more interesting? You know, and I generally stopped plotting screenplays out when I got out of film school because, you know, that's where they tell you have to do that, and it just killed all my inspiration. Like, I would just get through half a screenplay over and over and over because I'd have these index cards.
So you
Like,
mean
ugh.
that process of outlining with index cards was just dampening your
Yeah.
spirit?
Yeah,
And-
completely. Because also, my movies obviously are not plot-driven. And if it's not plot-driven, what are you going to put on there? She feels sad here. She feels a little better here. It's like, what is that scene? And so I'd put these artificial plots that lost my interest.
That's really interesting to me.
You know, walking and talking, I'm sure the first draft was pretty bad. It you know, was probably long and rambling, and I didn't have a sense yet, like I do now, kind of when a scene should end, or just an intuitive thing once you've written enough, right? That, but it took me 6 years to get that movie made.
Wow. Can you talk about that? Did you write the script on spec?
I wrote it out of film school. I'd made 2 shorts, and they were similar in tone, you know, like lovelorn girl stories, pre-Sex and the City, right? In New York, and that helped get the movie read and, I guess, imagined, because it was a similar genre, and wrote the script, and the producer who ended up producing it was like, not yet producing, but said, I'll try to get this made for you, let's rewrite it.
Is this someone you knew from college, or?
No, someone introduced me, someone who produced my short film, said, I know this guy, I think he had produced a horror film,
This wasn't.
Ted Hope.
Yeah.
You know
So
him?
I don't know him, but
Yeah.
they're both, their reputations. He and James Seamus, their reputations precede them. I mean, they're known to be such incredibly brilliant, nurturing.
This was before they were brilliant.
Right.
This was, yeah, I mean, Ted, yeah, they were great. I mean, they were brilliant, but they hadn't formed that company yet.
Right.
And then they formed it when they had my script, and then Ted made me rewrite it for, like, as long as we weren't getting financing, I might as well keep improving it, was the idea.
So did he have notes?
Oh, my God.
He did.
Did he have good notes?
Some, sure. Yeah, and James had notes, and then we acquired some more producers from Europe who ended up putting the money up, and finding the money and putting some money up, and they had notes, and then Miramax was going to make it, and they had notes, and then we had screen tests, and there were more notes, and then nobody made it, and then finally, you know, after 6 years, I was like, I don't even want to make this thing anymore. I'm married. It was like I'm the other person by
Right.
now.
It was.
It was like I started off, it was so long, and I wasn't that
Right.
interested in it anymore until I started directing.
Right.
And then it completely came back.
Right.
I was thrilled.
That's really. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well,
Because
forever.
you moved out of that time in your life.
Yeah.
But of course, I can't help but think that probably did the movie some good.
Yeah, right.
You know, because you probably had some added.
I could relate to the other character now.
Yeah.
Well, also have some
actually-
perspective when
Yeah.
you're not so, you could have that observational.
Yeah.
You could be more of a director than I'm getting triggered all over the place, although you probably were anyway.
Yeah, that was because it's so autobiographical.
Yeah. Well, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Watching the movie today, one of the things that I said to Winnie was, even though you have all these scenes with Anne Heche, it really felt like Catherine Keener's movie. It really did.
Right.
So even though it looked like it was these two friends,
Yeah.
and
And
Yeah.
then I said, or but one of us said,
we can.
is it whenever there's when there's a movie about two people like a friendship, isn't it always one of the people's really their movie? Isn't it always really their movie, and the other person is a little less of the?
Probably.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know what I wanted to ask you though.
Probably.
But so this was based on something that you went through with your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she had dinner with that friend tonight.
Well, I'm glad you didn't come because I did want to ask you some questions.
She was
It
gonna
would
come.
be, it felt very honest,
Uh-huh.
but watching the movie again, the Anne Heche character seems very passive aggressive, controlling.
Mm-hmm.
She's a tough,
Tense.
she's intense. She's very insensitive
Mm-hmm.
to her friend.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you handle that when it's based on your relationship with your friend?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, I mean, first of all, did it inhibit you when you were writing it, or what did you say? She didn't care?
That she didn't care.
She didn't. I don't think she cared. I mean, it does inhibit me. It up till now. I mean, I write about things, and that's gotten me into some messes. It has.
Can you talk about that at all?
Sure.
I mean,
Uh,
can you give, because I think one of the things that, in addition to being fans of yours, that appealed to Winnie and I about you is you do bring a personal voice, and you are writing about stuff. And here we have a room full of people, and I'm sure a lot of people here feel like if you're, you want to be able to draw on stuff that happens in your life, but how do you?
It's tricky. There's no rules. I mean, I think my friend's husband was upset by this movie, if I remember,
Oh.
because she cheats on him or almost cheats on him, right? And he seems kind of like a sap a bit for it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, only a man could feel that way. I mean, I think
he
he's
was
just
upset.
so sweetly depicted.
I know,
But
yeah.
just the fact that he's with, and,
And
she doesn't even have
Did
sex.
he know about
No.
that before he saw the movie?
She doesn't
I
even
don't
kiss
remember.
that guy. That's
And it's all
heavy.
made up. I mean,
Oh wow.
completely made up.
All
I
right,
didn't.
But
But she was okay with it. She went through a period of like, bridezilla or whatever they're called, where most women getting married, become insensitive freaks towards their best friends. And she did go through that, but then passed through it. And I don't know, I guess she felt like I just made up a movie, because
Well,
most
you
of it
just
is made up.
Brought up. Yeah, I mean, when you say most of it is made up,
Yeah.
I think this is so important because this is what I think is very interesting, at least to me, is that you're basing it on you and your friend, and you obviously are kind of bringing just tons of just raw emotion from yourself into the movie. I mean, that whole thing with the cat. I mean, that
Yeah, that's
has
all
to
made
have
up.
that was very upsetting to my
oh
cats
my God.
when we
That's
were watching today.
Boyfriend, I had a boyfriend whose cat jumped out the window or fell out the window.
right. So you kind of took. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that you.
Oh, and my
took-
friend had a cat who had cancer, but it wasn't our cat.
Right. But you took kind of like found objects. It's like
Right.
you kind of took things that you needed to, because like when we were saying before about how not much happens, actually there's plenty of incident. It's just that it's not the type of plot that is traditionally in American movies. But there's many things happen actually. And for instance, the cat is so loaded because, as you were saying, the cat is their cat,
It's like their child in
their
a divorce or
child,
whatever.
and
yeah.
that's another. We were talking before about. I mean, that's another just detail that you don't see. I mean, that is so. I don't want to say common because it makes it seem less important. It's so prevalent. I mean, people's intense relationships with their animals, and also the way in which that can affect a human relationship, or one feeling more about the animal than the other. it's so prevalent, it's so part of our lives, and yet when do we see it depicted? I'm going to say practically never. So I'm kind of blown away by the ways, the things that you choose to like pick up and put in.
So going back to the fact that you don't outline and you don't do the cards. So you sit down, you got this idea. What was the, like, tell me what in your mind, the idea was for Walking and Talking, if you can remember, when you sat down, you were like, this is a movie about this, but then do you literally start writing scenes?
Yeah.
And do you know what you're writing towards? Do you know, so you don't even know, then they're going to kind of work through this and, no.
No.
Wow.
I know. It's
And do you
almost
do it
scary.
chronologically? I mean, do you just
Yeah.
start at the beginning of the
Sometimes I'll spend a certain amount of time taking notes on an idea. Like for this new one, it was like, okay, this apartment situation, and I'll funny scenes that maybe that I can take from my grandmother, and this since it's about a grandmother and her granddaughters, and maybe I'll have some ideas that are exciting to me or seem like they'd be fun to write, and I just start writing, and then the next day I'll generally read over what I've written, and have a couple of ideas for the next few scenes, and I'll write those, and then I'll put it away, and then the next day I'll read those, and I'll come up with the next few scenes until I have a big problem, and then I figure out why I'm stuck, and then I usually, my new movie I threw it away, and then I came up with some answer to something which I don't even remember.
You mean you felt the problem was so intense that you
Yeah.
kind of went away?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
was like, this is bad, and I can't fix it.
what can you? I'm just curious. I'm very curious to hear what the problem might have been.
I don't remember.
Was it the kind
There
of
wasn't
thing-
enough conflict, probably. It was like someone had to cheat on someone or something bad had to happen to someone, and I had to make some stuff up, and it just wasn't working, whatever I was making up, until it did. Then I don't remember, though. I have such a bad memory.
It's okay.
But then something switched, and then the rest of it worked, which doesn't mean I didn't rewrite it again and again after that, but no, it's so much more fun to think, what's going to happen next? Oh, she could go here. He could say that. Or this could happen. And then
So much more fun than what? Than
plotting something out completely towards an end. Like, I don't know, is this couple, like in my new script, are they going to stay together? I don't know. And then the scenes just unfold, and then by the time I get to the end, I know what should happen.
that's really cool.
It's lucky.
It is, but I'm
That it
feeling
works.
very anxious as I'm listening to this because it's like
Do you got anybody write like that?
Well, I mean, I've
you do sometimes.
been known
Sometimes
to.
I'll do that, or I'll write a scene. This one. My friend Wendy's here, but like I'll write a scene because I have to hear the characters, but there's just so much anxiety. I mean, yes, it's exciting, and
Sickening.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like you have to trust yourself that you'll arrive at some destination without having any idea what the destination is.
Well, I try to, while I'm writing, I mean, getting myself to sit down and do it is hard. It's not like this isn't sickening. It's not like it's all really fun when I say that. It's also like I can't wait till it's over. That kind of fun.
a lot of fun.
Well, it's like I can't wait. If I promise I'll write till my 11, I can't wait till it's 11, and then I can stop. But it's sickening and fun and exciting and scary, and I have to be willing to write badly. Like I titled in, Anne Lamott, you've probably read her. That Bird by Bird book really helped me a lot. And in it, I think she says, title your things shitty first drafts. And I do. That's what
If
I
you
put
guys
in my final draft.
Have not read Bird by Anne Lamott. I cannot recommend it enough. It's fantastic. It's like a good thing to go back to when you're.
Unfortunately, it's one of the
For
best things
that.
she's written.
Well, all of her
A book
yeah,
about writing.
It probably is the
But
best thing
no,
she's written, but she's
yeah.
written this.
Amazing.
She doesn't need to write anything else
No,
other
it's
than that
true.
book,
No, I do love her writing, but
The
yeah,
fiction is not.
not as good
No.
as her operating instructions.
No,
was
and
great.
I like
Yes, it is.
I like
Yeah, me
the
too.
even like the
Exactly.
Religious
Jesus stuff.
yeah, the
I
Jesus
know.
stuff.
It's good. I buy it too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But she does. She says title it shitty first drafts, and that comforted me to see that at the top of my thing. It's like, this is gonna be shitty, and I'm gonna get it out, and if it stinks, no one has to see it. I can throw it away. Didn't take me 5 years, thank God, you know. And and that's the only way to be creative, is to give yourself that freedom for it to be bad.
Yeah,
I
it
think.
just never, I mean, that just always, it always comes back to that, is the freedom to be bad.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's really the watchword.
So in a weird way, you're kind of writing, you're discovering what the movie is, and you're writing your own version, I don't want to call it this, but of an outline, by writing it and having it show you what it is and what it isn't, and probably gives you a lot of ideas, you know. So you finish, this is a horrible question, but how long does it take you in that process? Has it been different for all your movies, or?
It's been different, and I never remember, but I think this last movie was like a year between the time I started, put it down, picked it back up. And I'm getting to the point, at least the last few movies, where the first-ish draft is the done draft. Like, there's still changes, but it's pretty much it. And it's very unconscious. It's really weird. I'll write, like in this new movie, there's things in it that I are so personal, and I can't believe that they ended up in the movie, like things that about me that I didn't plan on putting in there, or someone who knows me really well and says, that's about this. And it's like, I guess it is. It's amazing when you just let your unconscious write, you know.
I mean, even when you told us that opening about the mammogram, and then you said, you know, I don't really know why that's there. I just thought it would be interesting. To me, that speaks of, you know, when I have impulses like that, if I go back later, I can see why I needed that. You know, what that fulfilled for me. But it's like as you said, I allowed myself to have the leap where I just threw the thing in, and I allowed myself not to necessarily really completely understand why I needed to start the movie that way.
Well, that's one of
You know
the,
what I mean? Yeah.
to me, that's one of the interesting things about writing too, is you get these images or these thoughts that don't, like, you're just going, why a mammogram? I don't get it. One of the things that I do with myself, because, you know, as you guys all know, one of the hardest things about writing is that there's limitless possibilities. And sometimes this seems just as good as that. And there's a universe of things that you have to choose among. So every so often when I get an image like that, I'll say to myself, well, what if this was a good idea? If it was a good idea, how would it go? Or let's just pretend this is a good idea. Because sometimes you have that instinct, and maybe it's not like there's a master plan in your subconscious, but you're giving yourself something to hang something on. So you see that, and then, did you know, what came first, the idea of the woman having the lump or the mammogram?
The lump came later, but I was just remembering where the mammogram started from. This script started as, I get mammograms from this lady who is such a character. And so I decided to write a screenplay about her. This was long before the apartment stuff, I'm now remembering.
Right.
She's such a character. She's like this huge warts on her face and this short hair, and she lived with her sister, and all she did was talk about movies, like constantly. She was kind of a spinster. And I thought, I want to write a movie about this woman. And her name was Pat, and she looked like Pat, you know, like. And I don't know, she moved me in some way, and so I started writing a movie about her. So she was giving mammograms. And then that fell apart because she was like boring and ugly. And it was like, nobody's going to see this movie, and it's too, you know, it's like Marty. You know what I mean? Like, it was about this lonely woman. And then it evolved into beautiful Rebecca Hall somehow. And but that was the origin of the mammogram job.
But
and it's stuck.
It's funny how that little, like when you, I mean, I can only say that when you said that to me, when you said that's how my new movie opens, I immediately wanted to see that movie. And I felt like it's partly because, and even the way you described it, that you said you had sort of happy music underneath it, because it actually is both comical and upsetting at the same time. And I think that's a real feature of your work. I mean, like, just to take Walking and Talking, since we all just watched it, there are so like for instance, you have the cat fall out of the window. It's an incredible moment, I think, where she's walking and realizes that it's her cat and kneels down. Very serious moment, very touching for all of us. And then it's a cut to those two women, the Allison Janney and Alice Drummond, and it's again, this is the same thing I was commenting on before, that you have this style that I do love, where the scene starts and it's a very serious scene because we just came out of the death of the cat, and it starts with, like, you know, Allison Janney saying, you know, are you going to be okay? Because I because I'm free all day and we're not going to leave until you're okay. And it starts really serious, but then you see on Catherine Keener's face the realization that she's going to be stuck with these two women who she doesn't know, who she doesn't want in her apartment anymore, and she suddenly says, I feel okay. And so it ends comically, definitely funny, and it's only been like this long. I mean, it's like, it's a really short scene, but your scenes travel somewhere. They go to a beat you're not expecting. I mean, that is something I think you do all the time. I don't know if other people kind of felt that, or if you were basically just. Can I just ask how many people saw this movie for the first time? Wow. So basically everybody.
That's also our deal.
What?
The Writers Guild deal.
Yeah, exactly.
The DVD deal. Fucked up.
It's partly all started here.
One of the things that I wanted to comment on was, among other things that you never see in movies, the doubt of the bride. You know, you rarely see, it's always the bride who's hell-bent on getting married, or she's obsessed with the wedding. You know, when you talk about Bridezilla, I always think it's like the person who pictured the wedding when they were a little girl and it has to be just so. And I'm just laughing because I had a horrible marriage, but also literally I was like, used to hike every Sunday with this guy, and 2 weeks before I get married, finally, like after 3 years of hiking with this guy, we're making out and going, I wonder if this is a sign, you know? But you know, you just really rarely see the women having all that ambivalence and acting out.
I needed a plot. It was made up.
So that
Made
didn't
up.
happen with your,
No, she
Wow.
had no doubts at all.
wow.
No, I had to make stuff up. I don't remember that much the progression of how things came about, but
I feel a little better though, because you don't even remember the movie you just did. You don't remember what happened with that.
no,
with
I remember
writing
that
it.
one.
Oh,
Oh, the
okay.
mammogram. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming back. I know.
Yeah, it's all,
You found
but that's good.
I'm a
That means
drunk.
that means you're in the present. You're
Yeah.
living in the present, which is good.
You found a really interesting shape, though, because you not only have this, you did find this plot of she is ambivalent and more nervous to have it happen, but at the same time, of course, you have all these challenges that Catherine Keener is facing, and that she's overwhelmed by, really. But what you really do is you do this really interesting, I would say almost like classical type twist, where in the beginning, Catherine Keener is the odd girl out, and the two of them are joined at the hip, the people that are about to get married. And then midway through, we realize that Catherine Keener, that scene where she's in the boat with Liev Schreiber, and they're in the hammock, and they're giggling and talking about their relationship as it used to be, and they're as thick as thieves, and Haysha standing up there feeling alone. You do a perfect twist, but it didn't feel, to me, it didn't feel fakey or like you engineered it to be a twist, but it was kind of a classic-y type twist moment where suddenly we're going, oh wait, she's the one that's lonely and scared, and Catherine Keener's actually fine and has a guy. I mean, I thought that was kind of deftly done for a movie that was so cringeworthy.
I don't think, I mean, things like that end up, luckily for me, when I'm writing, it just comes naturally because you want. I don't think, oh, now I want to turn the tables because that'll be interesting.
Right.
It's just
You have a sense that something has to happen.
Yeah.
That everybody's got to go on a little
Yeah.
progression in their
Yeah.
life. A couple other things that I just have to mention that I really loved was I've had this fantasy so many times of just saying to a guy, like, what was it? Why didn't you want to go out with me? Or why didn't you want to go out with me again? And, you know, if a guy was like a friend, just like recently had a thing where this guy was attractive and he clearly liked me, but he did not want to go out with me. And I loved the fact that you believed it. They were friends. It was over. And she was like, what did I do? But I loved after that scene, too, that she was sure it was the black pants after he just came out and said it to her. But I loved that. The other thing that I loved, another moment, was this scene where, but it was the way you wrote it, where Anne Heche the sex had become routine. But
Oh
she
my
was
God.
so graphic about it that it took it into this whole other zone. You know, there's nothing more uncomfortable than having a conversation with a guy that you know, in order for it to work, that he has to be able to get it up, right? So you can't say anything that's going to crush the guy too much.
Well, I don't think she was concerned about that.
No, she was not. But
That
That's
moment.
another moment that you never see on screen. I mean,
Maybe now. I mean, Californication. It's like everything.
really?
Yeah, I feel like there's so much more. I watched that show like twice the other night, like just one night. I was like, whoa.
I don't know that show.
was it
so.
was it
Oh
a
my
woman saying that
God.
to him or him saying that to the woman?
Stuff he says to women. It was completely. Do you guys see this show?
It was sort of like
I didn't feel
shocking.
that compelled to watch it again. It wasn't bad or anything, but wasn't it? It's really graphic, right? I mean, just nothing is left unsaid. Like, you know, some stuff in Sex and the City when they're talking about really graphic things. I mean, it's great. I think it's funny and good that it is like that. But I'm no groundbreaker in that department.
but-
Not
but
anymore,
it-
anyway.
Yeah, but it was however long ago this
Yeah.
movie came out, and especially from a female point of view.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more of that. That I do think that there are ways in which you write women that is a little different from what is the norm and what is sort of usually expected or accepted. And I think it's heartening. I mean, I feel like it's needed. It's a breath of fresh air, basically, I think. Do you think we should take a few questions?
sure.
I mean, I'm curious. Yeah.
Yes. Hold on, wait. You're gonna.
We're going to give you a little mic. Oh. Or big mic.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to say that I thought it was a lovely film. I loved the what Winnie was saying about. I mean, the details, and I'll pay for half. I mean, I love that sort of obligatory guilt. I thought that was great. And I have a kindergartner, a girl, and just seeing the female bonding and the drama that starts in kindergarten, I think it really resonated with me because I'm seeing this through my daughter, and you know, and the way these friendships are already so important to her, and the hugging, and that I think somehow gets lost along the way, but the drama and the, you know, it starts. I think for women it starts young, and it is yeah. Anyway, I guess my question to you is, I guess coming from you especially, I'm surprised to hear you say that you wouldn't want to write a film about a lonely, ugly person, because I'm
I would, but nobody would want to make it. That's the problem.
and you really I mean you really feel that way. You think,
Completely.
but like look at like Annie Hall or something like that. I mean,
But Annie Hall came out a long time ago, and Woody Allen was the star of Annie Hall.
indeed, but he was still
Star.
a lonely.
No, but he's a brilliant comedian. I mean, there's the script, the movie that I just made. The character of Rebecca Hall is supposed to be an overweight, plain girl, like all of us. Do you know what I mean? A real person. There was no way I could cast that. There's just none.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
no, are you kidding? I
I
would.
mean, they wouldn't let you cast it.
I'd never get the money,
Yeah.
and I barely got the money as it is. And
I guess I see you as such like a trailblazer and like bucking the system and
I'm
sort
a
of
sellout.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
No, you just have to do it in.
Your stuff
in
is so
small
real, and I would just,
compromises. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I still have to compromise to get the movie made. This other movie that I'm hoping to get made in the next year, one of the main characters is a 18-year-old, really tall, obese girl, and it's important that she looks this way because she's got this really glamorous mother, and it's a drama and it's based on a book. I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm afraid that she's going to turn into Reese Witherspoon. She'll wear a big butt, and she'll grow her hair long. So it's like, you can't. It's just pathetic. And it's not the same with men. Men can be funny looking, and women can't.
I mean, look at this whole wave of
Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen and Michael Cera.
Could never have that
who-
equivalent.
No, you really couldn't, and it really is. It's just a time like when you asked your question, I thought, well, yeah, you want to do that? Go to England,
Go to be Mike Lee and make 2 cents.
yeah,
That's it.
go to Europe. But here, like this was quite a few years ago, but I developed a script with another writer. That was a Cyrano story with the girl who was fat, instead of, Cyrano, and it ended up getting bought by Steven Spielberg. I mean, literally, we had a meeting with Steven Spielberg where he had the worst ideas, but everyone was like, yeah, wow.
Amazing.
But anyway, they sort of briefly were like, well, we're going to see if we can cast this girl. So,
And of course, she has to end up thin in the end, too, right?
no, she didn't end up thin, but it was like they all loved the movie, but then they couldn't find a girl they wanted to cast. So now I'm thinking, really what the hang up is if there was a overweight girl they wanted to fuck, then they would find the girl. But as long as they wouldn't say it. But I'm trying to think, what is the problem? Because there really were people who could play the part in the way that the part was written and what was required of the part, but there wasn't somebody who had a huge amount of sex appeal in addition to being overweight. And, even in a lower budget independent film world, it's still an unbelievably expensive medium. If you're trying to raise money for a play, it's still hard to raise that money, but you're not trying to raise, $1 million, or I don't know what budgets you're working with.
More. No. Well, that was $1 million. Lovely and Amazing was just less than $1 million. Went backwards. And Friends with Money was $6 million, only because Jennifer Aniston was in it.
Right,
Until she was in it, I had no money,
right.
even with Catherine Keener and Frances McDormand.
Well, this is the reality that
And my
you're.
new one is $3 million. So I went back.
So this is after everything that she has written, but the kind of stories that she's choosing to tell, it's like everything in life. You have to make compromise. But I love your question.
Well,
I mean,
I guess that's my point. Like, I'm a newbie, and I just sold my first pilot, and I had to learn. I had to make. My initial draft was a guy who was sort of entering, approaching 40, and that whole existential, drama that we go to as we approach 40, and he had to be 28. All the women had to be hot. I was listening to all these, notes from the executives, and but I guess I just had hope that when you get to be, at a certain level, you can really start taking chances and not have to listen to all this craziness. And
Well, I think it's interesting because
Getting worse.
oh, it's getting much worse. I mean, seriously, there's no respect, and there's no nobody's saying, hey, you know what? I trust you. I really like your other movies. That's why I want to work with you. You do your thing.
maybe that does happen to you. Does that happen
Well,
to
that eventually happened with the new movie, and it doesn't have a title. That's why I can't say what the title is.
you? Right.
But they did to some extent, and I don't feel like I compromised at all. I feel like I made the movie I wrote. Rebecca Hall looks, beautiful, but in a kind of plain way, and she's really wonderful and luminous, and I feel like I was really lucky. So either I've brainwashed myself. But it's still the movie I wanted to make.
You know, sometimes too. I'm sorry, Winnie. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just going to say I think it's a very interesting topic because I think that the nature of doing what we do has inherent compromises within it that are always there, that are many, and it has to do with negotiating and trudging through. There's just landmines everywhere. It's just what we do. That's just what we do, and you hope to get to the other side. You don't always get there with everything you write, obviously, but I do feel like there is a way in which you just expressed it, kind of like there's a way in which you know when what you meant to say, what you meant to convey is just no longer there. And that has never happened to me. Like I've never no, actually it did, but it wasn't because people made me compromise. It was because the director, in my opinion, just didn't understand what my script was. So, like that, do you see what I mean? Like, in other words, I could have a million little compromises that have to do with making business, with being in business with people. But I've never compromised what I thought was what I was there to do ultimately, which was to express something.
I mean, even with Jennifer Aniston, I think it changed my viewership, and
Yeah,
like,
so there was a bit
people
benefit.
said, yeah, and I would not have put her in the movie if I didn't think she'd be good in this part. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, she helped me raise that much more money, and she's so famous and blah, 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 but if I tried to put all that aside, she was really good in it, and she was right for the part. So I compromised in a way that I still had integrity, and I still felt like I could make the movie I wanted to make.
Well, sometimes, I was just going to say, sometimes I've had a situation where, I get very frustrated when you're asked to change something, but where it actually can be better than what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what you're describing does not sound like it's going to be better, because it sounds like your fundamental idea is being perverted. Because the way you described it, it's somebody at a certain time of life, and if that's the impetus to get you to write about it, and you had something to say about it, and they're making him into a 28-year-old, you're then trying to take, this is what I wanted to say, and then you got to jam it into a different thing, and then you just get confused, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. But what these guys are talking about, sometimes you're pushed into another choice. Sometimes it's you got to cast an actor. Sometimes it's the budget. My idea was to go here or do this, and I can't do it because of the budget. And sometimes it's worse, and sometimes it's better. But I have a lot of empathy for what you're going through, because it sounds like you must spend a lot of days going, is this worth it?
Mm-hmm.
No? Yes?
Oh yeah, I mean, like you say, you just make it work, and then you know. But like you had mentioned the film Marty, and I've never seen that film, but I've heard what a beautiful film that is, and I guess I'm rooting for that mammogram chick, and like, why not tell her story? I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, if I shot it on digital video, could have. No, really, you can. And a lot of first movies should be made that way, I think, when you don't have anybody giving you money and you can do whatever you want.
Right.
But I have to make a living.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
indeed.
with children and all that.
How many
It also
shows?
seems like it is very European. Like, I can't even think of somebody here will think of it, but I just am used to not seeing movies like that, or even TV shows or anything. Can you imagine even wanting to make the Golden Girls now? But they look so old. It's hard to imagine something like that being made now.
Yeah, that's why I do feel like it's so. I mean, I hate to use the word important, but I almost can't help myself. I mean, I do feel it's important that you're making the movies you're making, even with whatever pressures are on you. I mean, that's natural that there's going to be pressures on you, but I do feel that it is bucking the tide. I do feel it is subversive to some degree. Whether it's completely
Shocked. I'm shocked I get to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if I were
Well,
you. I mean,
I
it's
am.
I'm shocked that you get to do it too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't mean that in any way, except that it is really. I use the term miracle. I really think it's really incredible that you're getting to do it, and it's important that somebody is doing it. I wouldn't want you to stop doing it. Let me put it that way. I was going to ask you how many children you have.
I have 2 boys. They're 11. They're twins.
2 boys. They're twins. Wow, that's intensive.
Yes. They're really cute. They're wild animals. And they're the most important things to me, much more than anything.
Let's take another question.
And then we'll go over there. We'll take, after your question, we'll take one more question before the break, and then we'll make sure to get more questions from you guys after the break.
Are you, do you ever write on more than one thing at a time? Like,
Not well.
no.
No, I know some people that do that, and I'm really not good at that.
So you always kind of just focus on the one thing you're writing on? Do you
Yeah.
write for specific people? I know Catherine Keener's, you know, do you always have someone in mind that you want?
Sometimes, well, obviously, mostly Catherine, and I do picture her saying those things because she does it good. And sometimes, like Oliver Platt, I pictured in the new one that he's in, and he said yes. But generally, no. I try to picture my friends and people that they're based on, even if it's loosely based on them. Sometimes I'll picture an actor that inspires me, like I like Kate Blanchett, and I can't get her, but I picture her saying it, and that makes it better, you know.
Do you ever find, like, this happens to me sometimes, there's something that happens in real life that I really want to use, but it's too specific, you know, like,
I do know, yeah.
too specific to, but it's perfect.
I know.
And sometimes you'll go, well, what's another thing that's almost this, but not
Yeah.
that?
Well, the Ugly Guy's based on somebody, and
Must have been hard. Was that hard?
well, it's really funny.
Did
I'm
you-
not going to say too much.
Yes,
because
please.
There's a camera right over there, and late
Yeah,
night
but who's going to
TV.
watch it? Honestly, we
Yeah.
really,
No.
I've been saying this. The sad thing is, we're documenting these wonderful writers that we have, but we can't move the DVDs. So what are the odds that anybody's going to
True.
see this?
I know. I'm sorry. Well, it's just he was based on somebody who wasn't ugly, and is not somebody that I thought was ugly. No, but it was a similar situation that I disguised as that. It was just somebody that I thought I had the upper hand with. I thought that he was lucky to be with me, and then he dumped me. I'm like, what the fuck? So, he kind of showed me, and so that I just turned it into that, so it wasn't, so he couldn't identify himself. But
But it was nothing with him hearing
created that whole
that
event.
message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that was just devastating. Even
I
though
know, he
I've
was
seen it so
sweet
many
in that.
times, I just watching that
Yeah.
again. That's really, and we were saying how much we love the moment when he turns to her and he says, "I just don't let my friends speak to about me that
he has
way."
more self-respect
He
than
had
she
so much self-esteem, and her face is like, God, you even have more self-esteem than I do. I was like,
I don't deserve you.
Yeah, it's like I am more of a loser than I ever dreamed, and her sort of stumbling off, and it was
Yeah.
devastating. That
Yeah.
combination, French people have that expression "jolie laide," I guess I'm thinking of it because you're saying the word ugly. When that means a woman who is not pretty, but she is
Appealing.
in a
Yeah.
way that isn't pretty.
Well, it means literally pretty
Be
ugly.
ugly.
Yes, and I feel like there's so many
Mick Jagger.
moments in your work like
Right?
that.
Well, there's
Like
a
that
lot of
kind of
peop-
like
Yeah.
freaky, sexy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like Mick
well,
Jagger.
Yeah.
But even, I mean, the French really, like, they love faces, the great faces, and somebody from one angle who's beautiful and another, they can look beautiful or ugly within a scene or within a movie. Anyway,
To me, your work is all like that. It's like, in other words, there's this sort of odd combination, like I say, in every scene of like things that are embarrassing with things that are charming, or things that are really stupid with things that are really kind of deep and intense. And I just find that really appealing.
But things aren't played just for. You don't turn the video store guy into a joke. He could just be a
Could've
joke,
been
and he kind of
such a
starts
joke.
off as a little bit of a joke with
Yeah.
he's nerdy, and then he
The
wants
joke's on her.
exactly the exploding, head movie that he takes her to, and then he's got so many. He does have that dignity and the self-esteem and so many lovely qualities that you're going, boy, he wasn't who I thought he was.
The moment when she says, "What are you writing?" and he says it's a screenplay about
He said-
Colette. I mean, come on, that's so genius. Because she's just like he just tosses that off, and she's so stunned by that. It's like
I am too. I forgot that. That's
you
funny.
forgot that.
That's funny.
Should we take?
There was one more
Yeah, let's take one more question.
Yeah. Hello. Yes. I just really like. There's a lot of. It's very layered, like Winnie was saying and Robin was saying. There's a lot there, and you mentioned that there were a number of bits and pieces taken out here and there, and I was just wondering, what exactly was the process that you went through that created what ended up being there?
Let's see. It goes, from writing it to people saying the scene is repetitive and you cut it out, if I'm answering your question. And then you rehearse it and actors will say, I feel like we did this scene. Or I feel like here I should be saying this. And then you write a new scene. Like the scene, and then in the editing room it's like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. Or it's too long, or it's doesn't push it forward, or a million reasons you end up chopping things up. I remember, the scene where Catherine's holding Anne in the water at the end of the movie. That was a scene that had a lot of dialogue in it, and they were sitting in the inner tubes, I think, and they were talking about I don't know, like boring stuff, like wow, things are really changing now, or something like that. I remember Anne H was like, I hate this scene, I don't want to do it. Something like that. And she was essentially right. It was like, we don't need to see them talk about this stuff anymore. We just need to see that their friendship will endure, that
Did you
she's
still
caring
shoot
for
it?
her. No, it was like the night before. We were all staying in that house, and we were up late talking about it. And it was, I was rewriting stuff in the stairwells, and it was horrible. A lot of it was because of Anne H.
Oh.
Actors will,
Yeah.
some actors will want to work on their character, change their characters more than others. I don't think Catherine probably said anything. She's like, I'll say whatever you want me to say. It's like, okay, I'll put you in all my movies. You not so much. But she,
See, this is like a really interesting topic to me because it's that whole thing about, oh my God, I'm stuck with it.
And when you're the director, you can't even hide when they come in the room.
no, I'm not the writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if she, I think we've talked about this before maybe with Jamie Vanderbilt, but if an actor is unhappy, they will not be good. That's where they get you.
If you'll never make your day.
And you'll never make your
There.
day.
It's just so
but
draining.
that you will not have something you're pleased with, because their joy just will siphon out of them like a little balloon thing. And so it's like talk about compromises. You have to find a way. I'm sure you found a way, because her character is totally, in other words, it has integrity. Her character, I'm not saying the girl has integrity, the person. I'm saying that is a character. That is clearly a character that.
I remember she wanted her character to be more likable,
Oh, that's interesting.
and that's generally.
Did you say, well, we have to get
difficult.
another actress to play her then?
Yes.
Well, she has
Oh.
moments. She has that moment where
Tough.
it's a very warm moment when she finds the ring in the diaphragm. It's very sweet. She's so charmed by it, and she's the way she responds to him, and
All right.
I thought the character was well played, but was a tough character.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. But I
Yeah.
thought it was supposed to be that.
She was, yeah.
Right.
But a lot of the stuff that she wanted me to rewrite was
the
you know,
toughness.
or like explanatory stuff, like why am I saying this, or I just remember it was
Wanted you to take it out or
Panic.
put it in.
Put more in.
more softer stuff in to
But
balance it.
Don't you think this is a typical thing that actors will feel? Not people like Catherine
Yeah.
Keener, perhaps, who are sort of a
Right.
little bit above that.
Right.
But people will feel, actors will feel terribly insecure that they're not going to be liked,
Yeah.
and they'll be desperately afraid that you have that they're going to be.
I've had that in almost all my movies.
So how-
Somebody who doesn't, and it's like, God, it's hard because
So
sometimes
yeah, what do you? I mean, how do you? What do you do?
sometimes I say, shut up, let's move on. And it depends. Like Oliver Platt, I adored working with him, and he had a million ideas, and eventually it'd be like, well, I'll take that one and that one and that one, and there's a trust and a mutual respect that we had. So I was able to, he didn't care if his character was likable. He just really wanted to do the best he could. And his input made his character 10 times better.
Right.
But sometimes in my first movie, I had very little confidence. And, I felt like I had to do whatever an actor asked me to do. And sometimes in my gut, I'd think, oh, I don't want to do this. And I'd say it. But mostly I was just terrified. And, she'd say right before we're rolling, I want to change this. Change a line is nothing. But, I don't think I'd ever do this. It's like, oh my, but we already shot that scene where you did that, and this is what's leading up to it. And, so I was very accommodating.
right.
I'm less accommodating, but I think that I guess if I can't be accommodating, I would help them trust me that they're not villains, that I love and respect this character who's having a hard time being nice right now,
right.
and if that person has seen my movies, they know that I don't villainize people or try not to put them, have them be one-dimensional.
Well, to bring up another movie, Friends with Money. I mean, the high point of that movie is Frances McDormand's entire character and performance when she. I mean, that is really, I think, one of the most memorable things about the whole movie is her just
dirty hair.
inability to not be angry. And that bravery on that actress's part to just go, I'm just going to be the biggest bitch of the movie. And
She had so much fun.
yeah, I can imagine.
It's really fun.
But not every actor wants to do that
Right,
or will
no,
go there.
no.
Lisa Kudrow, who's still a good friend of mine, was saying her agents are like, Lisa, you've got to look pretty in a movie, and you can't keep. She loves to look weird
The weird
and
hair.
be,
Right.
just
An
the most
actor.
annoying
Yeah,
person on the planet.
so
and
good at it, too.
she's so good at it. She loves it. She can't wait to do it. But her agents are like, boy, you gotta stop that.
New agents.
You're saying is there's a lot of pressures on them too.
Oh yeah.
So it's understandable, and it's their faces and bodies, and they feel very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's
you must
right.
feel vulnerable too, because it is a very revealing kind of writing that you do.
Yeah, but I feel like they're more vulnerable. I give them that. I do. I think acting is humiliating beyond belief. I just can't believe. I feel so like they're not doing it for me, obviously. But it feels that way sometimes when they're saying stuff that I wrote and they're sobbing or they're naked, or pretending to have sex or doing these, really embarrassing things that
Well,
they're
you
not even really embarrassed
you do,
about.
You do
It's
create
funny.
a lot of embarrassing. I mean, and when I think
Yeah.
about your work,
I'm more embarrassed than they are.
you create embarrassing moments. Actually,
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
like even in Walking and Talking, like the mole and the fact that he does have to listen to a tape of himself being described as ugly.
Well, just casting someone who's called ugly. That's
I mean,
embarrassing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you kind of traffic in that.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, it's powerful. I mean, I feel it is powerful. It's just it taps into something that embarrassment is shame.
Yeah.
Like in Love Me and Amazing, when she does that. That's a really difficult
Mm-hmm.
moment where she strips and asks him to assess her body. And I was really, that was a hard scene for me to watch.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I
you
mean-
felt embarrassed for her.
I felt overwhelmed by many feelings.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I felt like it was, I did think a bit of the actress. Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's a strange thing. It's like, am I exploiting her while I'm having her
It
do
was,
this?
it did that thing, I think, that you were
It's
talking
tricky.
about.
It's tone. I think it's tone.
Mhm.
But you were talking before about finding an idea and sort of falling in love with these questions that the idea made you think of that you couldn't answer,
Mhm.
questions you couldn't answer. And I think that was my response to that scene.
Mm.
It like flooded me with questions that I couldn't answer. Like, did I even want to watch a scene like that? I didn't even know. Of course, I was riveted and couldn't not watch it. And I didn't know if I hated him for assessing her that way or if I admired him for being honest.
I have all those same feelings too.
Yeah,
I
well,
still
that-
do.
I
Because she's on the internet now. Do you know what I mean? Like that
Right.
picture is porn.
right.
And
for
this is
some,
like-
for
And
some
I knew
people.
when I shot it, it would be. But I
Right.
still wanted to tell my story. It's like I still feel all those things. Like,
Well, that's the
Yeah.
part of you that will not compromise, if I may say.
yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also,
I mean, 'cause
Without-
that's a hard moment.
but without sounding too highfalutin, it really is art, and I think it's one of the things that's missing. I mean, I'm addicted to reality shows, but I can say that the difference between reality shows,
think you want to kill yourself?
they're my friends.
Really?
You just don't understand. They're my friends.
They're horrible.
My
They're
little
so
friends.
Stupid. I don't know.
They've
I
got
don't-
problems.
Even
They've got
Project Runway?
problems, like everyone. They have
I don't know.
problems.
I know. I
but-
can't judge because I've watched them. Someone's like, oh.
All I was going to say is that they don't interpret life. I mean, they're sort of riveting in their own way, but they're not revealing.
Bringing a sensibility.
They're not bringing a sensibility or point of view to make to think about what the human condition is. It's like a cringe moment stripped of any emotion or meaning. Right, there's no art in there, but what can I do? They're my friends. Anyway, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back. We'll have more of your questions and
I must be watching the wrong ones.
more in Nicole.
I don't want to sleep.